Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie Ravella, and I am here at Gateway Foursquare Church. I'm here with Pastor Brian for yet another fantastic interview coming to you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be fantastic, but we'll see how it goes.
It'll be
It's gonna be what it'll be.
fantastic. You gave a great message today, and your topic
thank you.
was on love
Yeah.
and the variations of love, but the four letters is extremely important in our world.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a
And-
huge deal.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about you and going back to your walk with God and how all this began for you. You told me that you were born in Yakima.
Yes,
And you came to West Richland, and you were a wee lad, and your neighbor had a grandson.
Yeah.
And he went to church. And so you kind of hung out with him and went to church. Your family wasn't really much into church that much, so
Yeah.
you went and hung out with him. Now, what was
Yeah.
that experience like for you?
it was really good. It was really special to me early on in my life. So like you had mentioned, so I was born in Yakima. I lived there until I was about six-ish, about mid-kindergarten. So I switched schools in the middle of the year, which was kind of, difficult for kids, right?
Sure.
When you're starting to make friends, and then it's kind
Right.
of move. But so we moved to West Richland, and then my next door neighbor went to church, and she had a grandson that was about my age, about a grade behind me, but pretty close. I actually remembered, I didn't say this to you, but I remember the reason that we met is that I was attacking his grandmother's sprinkler with a plastic golf club, and he came out to let me know that that was not appreciated. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, so it was really good. My life at the time was very much chaos. Obviously, not just moving in the middle of a school year, but also just my home life at the time was extremely chaotic. A lot of not so much like violently chaotic, but just very loud, and a lot of emotion and passion in my home with my parents and things like that. And so I needed a safe place, and meeting my friend, his name is Evan, but meeting him and then his grandmother became that safe place. Her home became a haven for me. In those early years, and then she began taking both of us to church. So I would stay the night at her house, and she would always have ice cream bars. So she always had the Swans Man ice cream bars, and so we would have ice cream bars, and we would watch a movie. She had one of those like tape rewinding, like separate tape rewinders, and I had never seen that. So that was kind of cool because there were VHS tapes.
VHS, oh, that's...
And so they had it. So you watched the VHS, and so that was cool. And then she had a separate VHS rewinder, and I don't know why I'm remembering that right now. But if you don't know what a VHS is, kids, ask an old person, and they'll help you out. But anyway, so and then every Sunday, we would say the Lord's Prayer every night that I stayed there. So I have that committed to memory. I've had it in my mind for forever, and I taught my kids. It was so impactful that she did that for me. That's when I had kids. That was a big deal for me. So we say the Lord's Prayer together,
Right.
because that's what she did for me. So yeah.
But your journey wasn't always that smooth.
No, it was not.
So you had a girlfriend that wanted to go to church, and
Yes.
you decided to sort of resume going to church more for her than...
Much more for her than for me. Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? Because there was a pivotal moment in there that made you you weren't so happy with God. And what happened there?
So we started going to church together, and I really had a huge encounter with God in those early sort of moments here at when it was Tri-City Foursquare. I felt like God was meeting me where I was at, which was awesome. It sort of rekindled all the things from when I was a kid, right? That safe place, that place of peace, right? That refuge that I could run to. And so we were in here, and we were in the basement, and the worship team played 3 songs. And it was Sea of Faces by Cutlass, and This Man by Jeremy Camp, and My Desire by Jeremy Camp. And as I told you before, they're very corny songs. But in the midst of those super corny songs, I heard God say my name, right? He just said Brian. And I couldn't believe that God knew my name, let alone would speak to me. So huge, profound moment for me. And I really wanted to get into church, and I really wanted to do that, right? I wanted to lead people into the presence of God. And that sort of lit the fire for doing worship music. Always wanted to be a musician.
Right. You come from a history of music in your family.
Long family history of music.
Your grandmother, you said, back in Tennessee, helped write some music for...
With Loretta Lynn.
And
some other people. Yeah, so very, very musical. My grandparents, my mom's parents met in a bar playing music. He played bass and she played drums and sang and stuff. So, very musical background. So I always loved music, but it was in that moment I decided I wanted to do worship music. And I wanted to give my heart to the Lord, and I wanted to go all in. And so I asked the youth pastor, whose name was Scott, where should I start reading my Bible? And he said, well, most people, I tell them to start with the Gospels, but he goes, I don't know why, I just feel like you should start with Ecclesiastes. And if you've never read Ecclesiastes, it's basically about how life is meaningless. The only thing that matters is loving God. And so that was a weird place to ask anybody to start reading their Bible, but it was exactly the place that I needed to go, right? Because I had chased a lot of things in my life. And so, to go there was really good. So fast forward through that, good relationship, lots of growth, and then to your question, something happened that sort of derailed everything. I wanted to be on the worship team really bad, but I wasn't living exactly a perfect Christian life. I was living with my fiance. I wasn't super involved in the church, but I really wanted to be, and so I felt like I couldn't do that, right? I wasn't good enough to be on the worship team because of my life and where I was at. But I also didn't want to change my life. And I felt like if God liked me, or, if God loved me, then, why did I have this struggle? And then a man came, Pastor Mel came to visit, and he said, because I was hanging out at all the worship practices, but I wasn't playing. And he said, hey, what are you doing here? Do you want to play? And I said, yeah, but, my life's not really together right now. And I was honest, I said, I'm having some struggles. And he said, so? Jesus meets you where you're at. And like I told you, he doesn't remember that conversation, and I can never forget it.
Right.
Because for him, it's just something he believed, right? It was.
So that kind of locked in the idea of, there's a place I can be me.
Yeah.
I'm accepted for me.
Yeah.
It's a safe place too, so you sort of found your tribe.
Yeah, I did. I found, it felt like family, which is something I'd always wanted. And so I decided I was going to change the way that I lived, and I was going to do things, what I thought was God's way. And I broke up with my fiance, and I said, hey, I don't think we should be living together. I don't think that honors God, and I really want to go all in with Jesus. And then my life really derailed, because I thought, surely this will fix everything if I just do what I think God expects me to do, right? And I just follow his rules, everything will fall into place, right? Now I know God loves me no matter what. Well, that kind of makes me feel like I want to change. So I'll just change everything for him. And then my life imploded. So my fiance ended up with somebody else in a very short amount of time, which hurt pretty bad. And that kind of sent me reeling, and I had kind of dabbled in drinking and things like that before, but I really started to head down the path of drinking quite a bit. I was just at the end of my 20th year of life, so I was heading into my 21st. So that was sometime around December when I was 20 years old, and I was turning 21 in February, so it was starting to become legal for me to basically binge drink. And so I sort of embraced that, and that, of course, led to lots of really terrible decisions, because drunk people don't make the best decisions, as it turns out, which led to a lot of anger.
So you were upset with God because you thought, I've done all the right things.
Yeah.
And so there's an expectation as if you lead the life of God's way, that you were going to be able to be with your girlfriend and etc.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way.
No, it didn't.
So you were very, very upset. So that was your challenge with God. So after that, I believe you told me that then you connected with another group.
Yes.
And that was a little bit of your tribe as well, where you ended up getting in small group.
Yeah, so that's, I was working at Sonic Drive-In, and there was a guy there, his name was Carlos, and he invited me to a small group through another church here in the Tri-Cities, and I kind of reluctantly went. He was a good friend, and he had a good heart, and so I decided, okay, I trust him, and, he's a good guy, so I'll go and see what it's all about. And then, they embraced me with open arms, and they liked me. They really didn't care about some of the bad decisions that I made. And again, like you said, I found my tribe, I found my people. I didn't necessarily love the church. It was just different than what I was used to. It didn't really fit me. Not that church needs to fit you, right? But I don't know, there was something off. I was never super comfortable at their church. But in the small group, the leader's name was Dave. And in that group, I had found a family, people that accepted me, no matter what.
Right.
And so, it was like going back home, I guess, is the way to say it.
Right. So from there, things started getting better with your relationship with God. And,
Yes.
and were you had a place of peace at that point where you said, okay, I'm understanding, I'm getting it, but were you feeling a lot more comfortable?
Yeah.
And making better decisions?
Yeah, I had cut back a lot on like drinking and stuff, and my friend Carlos invited me to a function here in the Tri-Cities that was called The Gathering, and I really wanted to get back into church. My relationship with God was still a little strained, so I was kind of taking my time, but he invited me to this event, The Gathering, that was happening here in Kennewick, and I really kind of didn't want to go, kind of like the small group, I reluctantly was like, well, okay, maybe. And then he told me, well, it's kind of a double date. There's this girl I'm interested in, and she's bringing her friend, and so I said I would bring my friend, and I was like, well, okay, who's her friend? And it was this girl named Iris was her friend, and I had worked with Iris at Sonic with Carlos, so I knew her. We were friends, kind of. I guess more acquaintances, and I knew that she was really pretty, and so I guess God knows how to get me in the door. And so I was like, okay, I remember Iris is pretty, I think she had a boyfriend, but whatever, that's fine, she's fun. She was a fun person to hang out with, so I'll go and hang out with her. So we went, and it was awesome. I kind of went for the wrong reasons, but it was awesome to be back in, this big Christian concert and be surrounded by people who were worshiping and kind of be reminded of that dream of leading people in worship, and being like, oh yeah, that's right, God, put this on my heart to do this. This is what God has for me, is bringing people into his presence. This is really cool. And I got to reacquaint with Iris out of it, which, selfishly was awesome.
So I have a question. I want to go back to something.
Okay.
So you were upset with God because, of what had happened with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is gradually that path changed in a positive way of
Yes.
that it's not, how did you put it? It's not as much going in it with expectations of, okay, if you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get that.
Yeah.
So what happened in there that made you say, I'm not going to be as frustrated anymore?
I guess it was letting that go. And it was a journey, and I had to be forcibly removed from my home because of some of the choices that I was making. So I was living with my dad in West Richland, and I had to be ejected from West Richland by a large man who told me not to come back into the town because I was making poor choices. And so I ended up moving into my mom's house in Pasco, and I had to get out of that whole environment. So life kind of got quiet. And I really was able to think about what kind of was happening, is that I was giving to get. right? That's ultimately what it was. Is I was like, okay, God, I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do this, right? And it was like bargaining, right? I'm going to do this, and then you're going to make this happen, and I'm going to do this, and you're going to make this happen, and life's going to be really easy because you're just going to, you're going to do your part because I'm going to do my part, and then, thank God, He blew all that up in my face.
Yeah. So you go to this great concert, this event, but you do something that is kind of a little unheard of. I mean, my father did it with my mom, which was, I was like, wait, Dad, you didn't know Mom long enough to ask her that question. So you asked Iris what?
So after that concert, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Like I said, she's really pretty. And so I was like, I'm going to ask her out on a date. And it was April 12th. It was Easter. It was a Sunday, right? And I said, hey, what are you doing today? Do you want to go hang out? But this was on MySpace.
I remember MySpace.
Not to age myself or date myself at all, but so I asked her out on MySpace because, I'm a coward or whatever. But for some reason, she said yes. So we went out on a date to a horrible movie I would never recommend to anybody, especially on a first date. I can't believe that our relationship survived that. Then we go and we walked around Walmart and we just hung out. And she was just so cool. She's not like anybody else. She was just super cool. And then she had a daughter. My oldest, Sophia, was about 7 months old. And so at the end of our date, I was looking at her daughter, and I just said, okay, here's the deal. I'm not going to be in and out of your daughter's life. So either we're in this to get married, or let's just be done. And she was like, yeah, I can live with that. And so I said, okay, but if we're going to do that, you need to know everything about me. And I told her everything, all of the junk of my past, my broken relationships, all the people that I had made decisions with, everything. And I just said, can you forgive me? And she said, yeah, I can forgive you. And then she said, well, let me tell you my story. And she did. And she said, can you forgive me? And I said, yep, I can. And we decided we were going to get married.
Right there.
Right there.
Right there on the first date.
Crazy
kids. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pure insanity.
Yeah. That when you told me that, I thought, that's what my dad did. My dad asked my mom on the first date, will you marry me? And I said, why do you do that? And he says, you know what? We just talked.
Yeah.
We just talked and realized we like the same things. We were on a path of we know what we want, and that's it. So now they've been together over 60 years.
I guess I would echo that. We both really wanted to get back into church. We both really wanted to take care of Sophia, which is weird. I didn't even know Sophia, but there was just something in me. This little girl, man, just stole my heart. And so we kind of both knew that that's what we wanted. And it was still a journey for both of us. We both had a lot of junk to get through. Of course. And so we did not really start going to church right away. We did want to do things God's way. We wanted to get married. We wanted to wait till we were married to make grown-up choices. Sure. And then we did not wait till we were married, And you had... And we had Adriana. Yeah, we had Adriana. Very fast, as I was telling you, very fast first year. We got together in April. We knew that we were pregnant in August. We moved into our first apartment in August together. We owned our first home together in December. And then the following April, a year later, our daughter was born. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so it was a wild first year. So your daughter went through something that was very, very traumatic. And that, when I asked you about your relationship with God with that, because that's a whole nother level, okay? What happened with her? So my daughter was very sick for her whole first year of life. So she was born April 26th, 2010. They identified her as having hydronephrosis in utero. And what that is a closure of the kidney at the ureter. So the kidney is processing waste out of the body, and it empties through the ureter into the bladder, but that became blocked. Their extra skin had grown or whatever, and so it became almost completely blocked, but not fully blocked. And so the doctor said sometimes it will open, right? Sometimes it will clear itself, and life will be good and it will be okay. So we just had to monitor her for the first year. And she always had urinary tract infections for the whole first year of her life. So she was always sick, had fevers all the time, cried. It was just horribly painful. And we had to go to doctor's appointments with nuclear medicine, which is basically where they strap your baby to a board, and they can't move in order for the imaging to be clear and for them to get a good diagnosis, right? The baby can't move. And so I had to struggle not to knock out a radiation technologist and rescue my daughter, my infant child, from these procedures. It was everything I could do to give up that control. And that's all I ever wanted my whole life, was to be a dad. Yeah, that was my number one aspiration in life. I kind of always wanted to act. I always thought I'd be good at it. I loved playing music, but more than anything else, I wanted to be a good dad. That was my number one goal, more than anything. Right. And so hopefully I've done that. My kids are older now, and we'll find out.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your story. And this has been an incredible journey that you have been through. You've been through a lot of pain as a young person that kids shouldn't have to go through. You survived. And then all the way to a husband, associate pastor, lessons learned. So if you had one thing that you want people watching this video to take away, what would that be?
Oh man, one thing. Jesus loves you. You can't be unloved, and you can't be unlovable. A lot of times we see things in life and we wonder, how could God be good with all of the bad things? I know me and you have talked about that before. But I encourage people, taste and see, because he's a good dad. His kids get a lot wrong, and they make some really bad choices. And unfortunately, a lot of his kids pay the price for that. But he loves his kids, and he loves you, and he wants you. And he's ready to welcome you home whenever you're ready.
Awesome, right on. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining in with us, and thank you, Brian, again for your time. What an incredible story. And we'll see you next time when we have another guest from Gateway Foursquare Church. Take care.